And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, March 31st, 8 EST, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Super excited to be talking movies with you this week. We are talking about A Working Man starring Jason Statham, as well as the new Jason Blum-produced horror movie, The Woman in the Yard. I'd say we get started with the biggest movie this weekend, A Working Man, directed by David Ayer and starring Jason Statham. This is a reteam of last year when they did The Beekeeper, which is an awesome movie. This movie stars Jason Statham as a construction worker who is ex-military. He's just trying to get by through his life as just a normal construction man. However, his boss's daughter is kidnapped by Russian human traffickers. His boss, played by Michael Pena, begs Jason Statham to save his daughter. Jason Statham's like, I don't live that life anymore. I don't live that life. I'm just a working man. But wouldn't you know it, he is tempted to go back into the field in order to rescue his boss's daughter. Kind of Taken-esque, just a lot more brutal. As I just said earlier, I really loved Jason Statham and David Ayer's last collaboration last year, The Beekeeper. It is my type of just junky, over-the-top action movie where Jason Statham's character is just this guy that likes to tend bees. The person whose property he lives on kills herself after she is scammed by an online scammer, and then he decides he's going to kill all these online scammers. A lot of things happen in that movie. It's super fun, super over the top. So coming into this movie, I was having a lot of anticipation just having a super good time. And I just wanted David Ayer and Statham to carry that energy over here. And they kind of succeed with that. But this movie is not nearly as successful as The Beekeeper. I really do think if you are going to this movie looking for a big, dumb, violent action movie, I'll just get out and say you'll probably be somewhat satisfied, but in terms of big dumb action movies, you can get a lot better than this personally. Jason Statham, as I said, he plays this ex-military guy, starts out very soft-spoken, but when he needs to get down in the action, he is able to kill anyone in the most brutal fashion ever. He has the ability to play these parts in his sleep. I am a big Jason Statham fan when he is in just this true, like, badass form. And he does do a very good job in this role, and just hearing the concept of this movie, if you are just looking for a good Jason Statham performance and him doing the Statham thing, you're going to be satisfied. And he doesn't really do too many things different here, but I think he knows what people come to him for. He has that movie star iconography feel to him, and he's able to pull that off very, very well. This plot, it is a very simple plot of a character gets kidnapped, another character has to rescue them, they go through a lot of criminals. Very simple plot, very cliched plot, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think the important thing here is you want Jason Statham's character, Levon, you want him to be able to save this young teenage girl. And yeah, the movie does a very good job at that. It's very hard to screw that type of concept up. It would be, if the movie had us rooting for the human traffickers, that would be an insane thing. That would be just a huge misfire. The movie is competent enough that you are cheering and you are very happy when you see Levon killing all of these human traffickers and killing all these Russian criminals. Does a very good job there. So I will give it the credit there. Probably the biggest positive I think about this movie are the villains. There are two villain henchmen who end up kidnapping the teenage girl. Their names are Viper and Artemis. They are played by Emmett J. Scanlon and Eve Morrow. Now there are a lot, respectfully, there are a lot of villains in this movie, but I think these villains, the fun part about them is you learn they're definitely very low on the totem pole, and that's why they were asked to do the kidnapping here. But they have a very fun dynamic. They hate each other. They kind of get along, kind of don't. They're always just like insulting each other in the best way. I think it's always fun when during these action movies when you have like these really fun villains, and these characters definitely fill that spot. There are other villains here. I can't quite name them. Movie has a weirdly complicated plot towards the end of the film where you have to remember who's on everyone's side. Jason Statham's character is like fooling all these characters into thinking that he's working for the human traffickers, which is kind of funny because like some of the villains end up being very, very stupid towards the end. But you do end up seeing Jason Statham kill them in brutal fashion. So I can't quite say it is a total wash there. But yeah, the characters of Viper and Artemis are definitely the highlights for me of this film. If I were to say one of the weaker elements, movie does shamefully waste David Harbour, who's probably the biggest actor in this movie, aside from Jason Statham and Michael Pena. Michael Pena's character is very much just there to be like to sort of be like the everyman. He is this boss that just obviously really, really wants his daughter to be saved and wants Jason Statham to help him, and will do anything to get his daughter back. He's in it for like a little bit, but of all the actors that I think could have definitely been used better, David Harbour is easily that character. You learn that he plays one of Levon's old friends from the army, and he has now gone blind. And you have certain scenes where Levon goes to just talk to him for advice. They have scenes where they reminisce about like the old times, but you keep on thinking like, is there going to be a scene where like Levon's like, I need help, and goes to David Harbour, and they end up like taking out a bunch of Russian criminals. And while there is a point in the movie where he does go to this character and ask for help, there's never a moment where they let David Harbour shine, which is a shame because David Harbour is one of those actors that I think can make really just any type of movie better, and I think David Ayer criminally underuses him here, and he could have been a very, very fun ally to Jason Statham's character. We kind of see that sort of allyship towards the end when he does find his boss's daughter that he's trying to help, and they do have some like sort of fun dynamics in the final action scene. But when you have David Harbour right there, it is just a shame that David Ayer didn't see, like, oh, we could have had scenes where just Jason Statham and David Harbour are just mowing down these criminals, and that is definitely kind of a letdown. Obviously, when it comes to this type of movie, you're very much going in for the action, and David Ayer does an okay job directing the action here. It's violent. It is brutal. It's very, very bloody. If you're squeamish when it comes to violence, don't go see this movie. There are a lot of really, really violent deaths. That being said, compared to The Beekeeper, it's not nearly as violent. And I think just something that I just found a little bit disappointing here is I just don't think the action was directed the best. I think it overuses shaky cam a lot, and the editing is super, super quick and super choppy, which I know definitely can like create a tone. But I found myself very like distracted, like trying to figure out what is going on in certain action scenes, figuring out where the focus is. And I think that just came down to just the editing is just so quick. And I wish the film would have like slowed down in these action scenes and maybe cut out some of the other expositional scenes. Because I'll be honest, this movie has around an hour and 50-minute runtime. And I definitely think you could have cut down some parts. You definitely do feel that runtime, especially towards the end when the plot starts getting a little bit too complicated. Certain things aren't really wrapped up like super well. Like without spoiling anything, there are certain villains that are just left like alive and just sort of unresolved, and like their fates are left kind of unresolved. I'm not sure if that's maybe because David Ayer wants to make a sequel to this. If he was going to make a sequel to either this or The Beekeeper, I would much rather take a Beekeeper sequel. But yeah, there are certain characters that are just sort of like their fates are just sort of like left up in the air. Even the conclusion when everything does happen towards the end, the ending does just kind of come out of nowhere, which feels weird for like this sort of movie. But as the credits start rolling, I was like, well, it really just seems like the movie just kind of like ended within like 2 minutes, where it seemed like we were like gearing up for another climax. I'm happy we didn't have another climax, and the movie didn't feel like way too overstuffed. But yeah, I definitely think the editing towards in the action scenes could have been handled a bit better, so we could really like feel this violent action as we were watching it. The final set piece is insane. I need to talk about this. So with Michael Pena's daughter, she ends up being bought by this one rich guy, and he doesn't just want to buy her to have sex with her. He wants to buy. He is from Russia, so he flies down to America. He holds his own like Great Gatsby / Beauty and the Beast party, and he wants to be attending this party and then go over to this castle where he can where he can spend time with this teenager. It's super weird. He's a super creepy character, but it's just such a weird like out of place out of place element in this movie that's trying to have this really like gritty action feel to it. Like, yes, it does have this element of fun to it, but this sort of style just felt a little bit too over the top, and I was just scratching my head as we were in the third act, because I did find that very, very confusing. The final thing I did want to say is this movie does have a subplot with Levon's daughter, where you learn that Levon does have an estranged relationship with his daughter, and he can only really see her like 2 hours a week. I can't quite remember whether or not him and his wife are divorced, or whether or not his wife died, but for the most part, she is living with her grandpa, and while I can definitely see that this character was added just to add a little bit more tension into the film. The fact that Levon has a daughter, so he has certain elements of his character that could be put in peril, but it doesn't quite take away from the movie. I've always been been someone that will point out when I feel like a movie adds a kid character just to put in like unnecessary stakes. And while that does happen, while I can definitely see that was the reason why this character was put in there, she doesn't really get in the way of the main plot. So yeah, if I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being absolutely excellent, 10 being absolutely horrible, I'm going to go right in the middle, and I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. I really want to go higher. There are points in this movie where I was having fun. Jason Statham is always great in these types of movies, and yeah, like I am the first type of person that will really like run to a dumb action movie, but this movie just has a bit too many setbacks that I think just hold it back. If you are someone that will just eat up any dumb like schlocky action film, maybe go see this in theaters, but anyone else, you absolutely can hold off until this hits streaming. There are definitely a lot of other better action movies that you can go see, and this one I would say doesn't quite need your priority. Again, I didn't hate my time at all with this movie, but it just has too many things holding it back that I cannot give it a passing grade. But yeah, I say we head right into our second review of the night, that being The Woman in the Yard, directed by Jean-Claude Serra. Jean-Claude Serra is a really fun director where he's clearly just one of those directors that he's done a lot of work, a lot of movies, definitely not an auteur by any way. He's definitely a filmmaker for hire, but he's always working. He doesn't have too many movies I truly hate, and he always has movies that I'm like, yeah, that was fun. He did The Shallows. He did a lot of Liam Neeson action movies. He did Nonstop. He did Run All Night. He did The Commuter. Recently, he did Jungle Cruise and Black Adam. But yeah, this is him going back to his horror roots. He was the guy that did Orphan. This is about a mom by the name of Ramona, played by Daniel Deadwyler, and she is living with her 2 kids out, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. They essentially live in like this big field, have a few neighbors, but it very much seems like they live on like farmland. And one day, Ramona looks out in her front yard, and she sees this woman just sitting there, looking at her and her house and her kids, in this big black robe, and neither her or her family really know why she's there. As the movie starts going along, you start realizing why she is there. Certain characters get restless about like, hey, can we do anything? Can we remove this character from our yard? Yeah, and then a lot of things happen towards the third act. We'll get into that. The first thing I want to say, this movie is about 80 minutes long, so it's about an hour and 20 minutes. And you feel it in the best way possible. This is a short movie. You are in and you are out. Movie flies by. Like, I can't say this is an amazing movie, but whenever you have an 80-minute movie where you don't feel where it feels 80 minutes, that is always a thumbs up for me. Almost every single movie I see, I'm always like, that probably could have been a little bit shorter. And this is a movie where I'm like, no, just short enough. Good job, Jean-Claude Serra. Didn't feel the need to pad the story out any bit. I will say it does a decent job at creating tension in the first 2 acts, without doing a ton of work. When this woman shows up in the front yard, she doesn't really do anything. She doesn't start like yelling at anyone. She's not doing anything weird. She's just sitting there, and the characters have no idea why. Daniel Deadweiler's character does end up approaching her. She tries to figure out what she's doing there. She starts to get an idea as to why she might be there. And because of the fact that she's not telling her kids, that's where a lot of the tension builds up, and why a lot of characters start turning on each other in a way. The first act and act of this film, and specifically the second act, where you really start seeing a lot of a lot of conflict. The characters start to rise up. That's when this movie starts getting really, really good. Or maybe not like really good, but definitely like very entertaining. And I was very invested in this part. The performances. This movie has like 5 performances in the film, and I think all of them are very good, especially Daniel Deadweiler as Ramona. She does a very good job at playing this. At first, she's like this very like depressed and like down on her luck mother. When we meet her, she is handicapped from a car accident that handicapped her and killed her husband. So you realize why the family is sort of in a very like dour spot, because her husband and the kid's father has just left their lives. And the other great performance I think is really good is I wrote down his name, Peyton Jackson, who plays her son Taylor. Taylor is the character that definitely starts feeling the most worried and starts wondering, like, hey, why can't we just get rid of this woman from the yard? Why, if we're telling her to leave and she doesn't, why can't we just take the matters into her own hands? And most of the conflict comes from just like Taylor and Ramona sort of starting to clash. You can clearly tell that their like past trauma is starting to affect them. They have a daughter named Annie who is like very young, so she is handling in a realistic way that you would see a young child handle the situation. For a horror movie, it does a really good job at just creating this tension. Certain weirder things start happening where their dog disappears. He disappears when he's out in the front yard. When they go to try to check their car, it just won't stop starting. They know that something is going on. This woman is the cause of it, but they don't really know why. And for the most part, when I'm just watching this movie, I was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? Who is this woman? What is going to happen? And then you finally realize why this woman is there and what she has to do with Ramona. And without spoiling too much, when we get to the third act, the reason why I don't think this movie works is because while the first 2 acts do a really good job at setting up this conflict and the scenario, I think the third act does a really disappointing job at paying it all off. For one, when you do start having conflict inside of the house and when the characters' lives start getting in danger, it becomes every single cliched horror movie you've seen. There are a lot of jump scares. It's really like poorly lit. There is a lot of like flashing light, but not in like an artistic sense. It really just feels like the flashing light was just there for like an annoyance, and I was really ticked off with that. So yeah, that's so from a directing style, it kind of just becomes a little bit like sloppy. And then from a story perspective, without spoiling too much, the reason why the woman is there is this becomes a trauma-based horror movie, which isn't bad, but we've seen a lot of them. And if you're going to do that, you have to do something new and you have to do something different. And this is where this movie doesn't really do anything. It just starts feeling like your everyday horror, like trauma-based horror film that you've seen so many times before, and you just end up feeling bored by the end of this film. There is a twist that you find that happens around the third act. It's not a bad twist, but you can definitely tell it's going to happen from the minute this movie starts. When from the second we have our first scene, it is a flashback, and when you see that flashback, you immediately know where this film is going. And when you have a movie that hinges on its twist in such a heavy degree, you just end up feeling very disappointed when we get to that spot, and it doesn't find any unique way of paying that off. Jean-Claude Serra for me is a master of these types of movies, whether he's doing action, whether he's doing horror, whether he's doing family, where they are very much like movies for hire and very like easy entertainment. But I think the reason why I was just disappointed with this one is because it almost got there. It almost felt like this was going to be a really fun, like really tense horror movie that would be really entertaining for 80 minutes. But when it ends in such a lukewarm way for me, I can't really recommend it. The ending of this film, it has a slightly optimistic ending, even though I was a little confused how we really got there. Like, without spoiling too much, I know what the woman was trying to what the titular woman in the yard was trying to represent, but I just found it very like confusing all the levels the movie had to start taking to really like explain like what exactly was going on. And that is why I don't think the movie really comes together that strongly in the end. If I were to review this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'm going to go slightly lower than A Working Man. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. This is a movie that, when it was first starting, I thought I was going to be giving it like around a 7, maybe a 7.5. I was like, this is a good movie, but that third act completely derails it and leaves me in a place where I cannot recommend this film. Only see it if you are like super horror crazy and really need to see like every single horror movie. If not, this is one you could definitely skip. Even when it comes out of streaming, there are better horror movies out there. But yeah, that just about wraps up our show. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing a Minecraft movie. That is the title of that film. Very interesting way how they decided to title that movie. And one other movie. But yeah, thank you all for watching. This has been a great show this week. I will see you next Monday. And remember, as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was Beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.